This has been understood since planting began. The attention of the seed to the draw of the moon is, I suppose, measurable, like the tilt of the planet. Or maybe not. Maybe you have to add some immeasurable ingredient, made of the hour, the singular field, the hand of the sower. Sometimes the desire to be lost again, as long ago, comes over me like a vapor. With growth into adulthood, responsibilities claimed me. So many heavy coats. I didn't choose them. I don't fault them. But it took time to reject them. Now in the spring, I kneel. I put my face into the packets of violets, the dampness, the freshness, the sense of everness. Something is wrong, I know it, if I don't keep my attention on eternity. May I be the tiniest nail in the house of the universe, tiny but small. May I stay forever in the stream. May I look down upon the windflower and the bull thistle and the coreopsis with the greatest respect. Teach the children. We don't matter so much, but the children do. This always chokes me up. Show them daisies and the pale hepatica. Teach them the taste of sassafras and wintergreen, the lives of the blue sailors, mallow, sunbursts, the moccasin flowers, and the frisky ones, inkberry, lamb's quarters, blueberries, and the aromatic ones, rosemary, oregano. Give them peppermint to put in their pockets as they go to school. Give them the fields and the woods and the possibility of the world salvaged from the lords of profit. Stand by them in the stream. Head them upstream. Rejoice as they learn to love this green space they live in. Its sticks and leaves, and then the silent, beautiful blossoms. Attention is the beginning of devotion. Oh, sorry. I really love nature.
It was.
Yeah, good writing. All righty. I put this in here so I wouldn't lose it. All right. Last year, I volunteered to do a service on water justice during Reverend Cindy Landrum's sabbatical. You graciously accepted my offer. I shared with you why it's not enough to have state-level laws to protect water, but that local engagement is essential. We all are part of protecting water. At that service, I didn't define justice. I didn't define water justice. Instead, I just said that I could see where there was injustice. We mentioned the Flint water crisis. Since then, we have the Wolverine contamination situation. There's the water shutoffs in Detroit and other places. So it became very clear, that we had an injustice problem, for sure. But since then, and because of your active listening, I spent the rest of the year, or another year, fully exploring water justice. Did anybody see any painted rocks in this place? All right, would you like to bring it forward? Have you found one? Yeah, if you found a painted rock. We'll bring it up. One at a time. Oh, you found two. Cool. All right, so this is kind of a fun thing we have going in the Jackson community. Have you heard about painted rocks? Raise a hand if you have not. Okay, cool. So this is a fun thing. There was a woman who was at the beach in Florida, I think, and she had just maybe lost her parents, and she had always walked and looked for rocks, and it's just a thing to do, right, to find beautiful rocks. Well, she happened to look down, and there was one, and it had a message on it, or maybe it was a heart. I don't even remember the story. But anyway, she felt like it was a message to her. whether it was a written message or if it was a heart, it was like her parents were there in that rock. And I think it was a message on it. And later she saw a friend who mentioned that she had put that out on the beach. And she thought, well, what if I were to write messages on rocks and just hide them for people who are just out for a walk? Maybe they need to hear some kind of a message. And so it's this thing of you paint the rocks and you put out there into the universe something that you think maybe needs to be said, and then people stumble upon them and find them. Kids really like looking for them and finding them. So I painted a few rocks and put them around here. And these rocks have on them the words of the 4 pillars of water justice that I have discovered in the past year. So this one says, water for all. And then this one says, water can help us to live together. So another one. And this one says, putting water at the center. Is there one more? Katie knows where it's at. Katie hid it for me. Yes. What does that one say? Public partnerships, PUPs. Okay, so 4 pillars of water justice. I had to shorten the phrases to fit on the rocks, but paying for water for all is one, so affordable water for everyone. Water has rights too, and that's also listed here as putting water at the center. Public partnerships, PUPs. So we hear a lot about public-private partnerships, but when it comes to water justice, public entities collaborating with other public entities is really important. And then water can teach us to live together. And that's the focus of today's talk, is water can teach us to live together. It's around how water is universally cherished, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how it matches with universal values, universal moral values. So, this past year, I've only really been testing the waters, but I've been bumping into signs that are suggesting that I go in a little deeper. So, one of them being your invitation, or Reverend Cindy asking me if I would do this service too. So, like in the reading where Mary Oliver talks about how we have to bump into things to learn who we are, it's through life's process. We are constantly learning ourselves if we're paying attention. This is a bit of a story about that as well. So our church each week provides a grounding for us in our personal and spiritual journeys. And the social justice emphasis speaks to me in such a way as I hear it as an invitation to consider going deeper into the social justice realm. So we'll get to that at the end. But first, let's begin by talking about this place as where we are called to embrace the awe of the natural world as part of our religion as well. So World Water Day as a celebration is in part a celebration of our unique water wonderland in our corner of the world. So Southeast Michigan has a treasure of fresh water. So I brought in some visuals, being that this is a intergenerational service. I've got some different things up here. Can you see what this is? You can pass it down the way if you want. So, in here we have, does anybody know what kind of a rock that is? Sandstone. All right, there's two pieces of sandstone going around. Anybody want to talk about how do you know that's sandstone? The sand comes off in your hand, yeah? There's a mine over in Napoleon with a huge amount of sandstone. And would you believe that's exactly where I found those pieces? Sandstone is a kind of a rock, and it's made up of compressed sand. And then what's in the other container going around? Soil. Dirt, right. And we're going to talk about sandstone and dirt, or soil. I've got a couple of questions here. Can somebody describe what is an aquifer? Yes?
Well, it's a large amount of water under the surface of the earth.
A large amount of water under the surface of the earth in a pool. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add to that definition? Or? Do you know the name of the aquifer here that we draw from? Anyone?
Grand River.
The Grand River is the watershed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody? Yes?
Maybe the Ogallala.
Oglala, that's not it here, but you've heard of that aquifer. Ours is called the Marshall Sandstone Aquifer. And the Marshall Sandstone, that's why the piece of sandstone going around. The Sandstone Aquifer is where you have the rock that contains the water that is the pool, that pools, is called sandstone. And sandstone aquifers are among the most productive anywhere in the world. This particular aquifer stretches across the state, but it only comes to the surface here in southern Jackson County and then a band around. So the cities, there's many cities that draw from the Marshall Sandstone Aquifer, such as Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, Howell, Bad Axe, Summit Township, Marshall, Middleville, Albion, Hastings, Sandusky, Caledonia Township, Springfield, Carsonville, Spring Arbor Township, Leone Township, Millington, Wayland, Elkton, Holly, Marlette. Anyway, it stretches across at least 52 counties. But most of the aquifer is covered in layers of clay and layers of other rock and sand and that sort of thing. But here, it comes right up to the surface. It's exposed to the surface, which is why we have so many freshwater springs and so many lakes and the headwaters of so many streams. We've got this incredible water. It's like sweet water, fresh water. It's the highest quality groundwater that comes right up to the surface around here. And in fact, we have, I was looking into this. We have more wetlands, more pre-settlement wetlands than any other southern Michigan county. And this is like a lot of wetlands. We have in Jackson County 235 wetland acres. It's 14,000 more wetland acres than the next most wetland abundant county, which is Calhoun County, right next door, right? Wetlands are protected from development because their functions are so important. They provide services that are critical for maintaining water quality and also taking care of the air. They provide biological, amazing things. And have you ever heard of, I know some of you have, heard of a prairie fen wetland? Yeah, we have a couple who have. Anybody not heard of a prairie fen wetland? All right, so a prairie fen wetland. So although we have 32 different kinds of wetlands in Michigan, Not all of them are rare types of wetlands, but prairie fen is a globally rare habitat, but it's fairly common around here. And it requires freshwater springs, and it requires a constant flow of groundwater, fresh groundwater, to keep it creates the right environment for rare plants and animals. For example, carnivorous plants, orchids, rare butterflies, Massasauga rattlesnakes, box turtles, and tamarack trees. And this is a type of community that is fairly easy to find in this region, even though it's globally rare ecosystem. So the soil that I sent around. So the sandstone aquifer is vulnerable to contamination because sand doesn't really clean things. It does a little bit, it can filter, but the soil is what really keeps the water that goes down from the rain down into the ground clean. Soil is our biggest water purifier, and it does it by, one, filtering, so physical processes, filters, but two, chemically. So there's chemical reactions that happen that will break down contaminants that happens in soil. And three, biological processes. So through the process of living beings in the soil, it transforms the water that might have contamination into it to pure, wonderful water. So our soil is critical. And this is tied directly to World Water Day, because this year, World Water Day, the theme of World Water Day is Nature for Water. And it talks about, this year, World Water Day focuses on how nature, how our natural world, our soils and our ecosystems, they can give us the solution to many of our water challenges. So they say on the website, we need to do so much more with green infrastructure and harmonize it with gray infrastructure wherever possible. Planting new forests, reconnecting rivers to floodplains, restoring wetlands will rebalance the water cycle and improve human health and livelihoods. World Water Day is coordinated by UN Water, the United Nations interagency collaboration mechanism for all freshwater-related issues, in collaboration with governments and partners. World Water Day is held annually on March 22nd as a means of focusing attention on the importance of freshwater and advocating for the sustainable management. An international day to celebrate freshwater was recommended at the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro. And so 1993 was the first World Water Day. So we've talked about how our freshwater resources are so rich and valuable right here in our own community, and yet we don't have a tremendous, with our representative government, we are not able to, we don't seem to be able to put in the kind of protections that citizens are demanding and wanting. So our aquifers are at risk. Are special, even though it's so precious and it's so valuable, it's still at risk. It's not protected adequately. So in addition to enjoying nature, that's one way of celebrating World Water Day, is to go out and explore our beautiful wetlands, spend time with the birds and walk the creeks. But another way is also to go and join together with others who are insisting on better protections for our freshwater resources for citizens. So I have a flyer about what's happening on World Water Day in Lansing this year. And there will be copies of this flyer for you, whoever is interested, downstairs at coffee hour. And what we're saying is one thing you can do is to attend the World Water Day Michigan Capitol Rally. It's from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. They suggest that people carpool, and there's information about that. because they think parking is going to be difficult. But why would we want to march on Lansing? We can experience the positive energy of people who are committed to bringing water justice for all of Michiganders. We can find support for local actions and lend support to others. By coming together in person, we send a clear message to lawmakers that we insist on laws that protect and restore our precious and vulnerable freshwater resources. So there will be a flyer for you if you are interested in partaking in that. So I'm going to close with all right. So I have a couple of, all right, sorry, I'm going to back up. I jumped ahead. So moral foundations theory. I want to talk to you just for a couple minutes. Sorry, Anita. I'm not going to close just yet. So I said that our water resources are at risk and unprotected. And I also told you that I was going to talk about how water can help us live together, right? And I have a rational explanation for this. And I've been searching for it for a long time. So I told you I've spent a year looking at water justice. And the rational explanation that I have for how it is that water can bring us together is in the moral foundations theory. So I apologize to any of you who are not, science-minded folks, but this is a anthropology finding. And what these anthropologists studied people around the world, and they studied societies around the world, and they looked at what are the moral foundations that we have in common? What do all societies share in terms of moral values? And there are 7 of them, and they are care versus harm. So it's immoral to harm, and it's moral to care. It's moral. Fairness is moral. Cheating is immoral. Loyalty is moral. Betrayal is considered immoral. Liberty is moral. Freedom, liberty. Oppression is immoral. Authority, respect for authority is moral. Subversion is immoral. Sanctity is moral, and degradation is immoral. Now, if we look at those moral values, which are shared by people in societies all around the world and throughout all of time, we can see that where it comes to taking care of our water resources, we can hit every single one of those from a moral grounding standpoint. So, care versus harm, taking care of our water and our water spaces. It's obvious, we don't want to harm them. Fairness versus cheating, right? If we talk about it being everyone having a right to water and ecosystems having a right to water, that falls right in the moral ground of fairness. Loyalty versus betrayal. This is the one that I struggled with the longest, but I see that sometimes we can confuse power with loyalty. And if we can detach from that and we can think about we're a democracy and we are loyal to each other and to this country and the foundations of this country, if we stand up for the democratic process and the interests of the citizens being represented by our laws, then we're not being subversive, we're simply being loyal to that which we hold dear in terms of our patriotism. Versus betraying each other, which would be immoral, turning our backs on our neighbors. Liberty and oppression. Liberty, the freedom. Oppression, clearly exploitation of others by taking away their sense of security and economic exploitation. Immoral. Liberty, the ability to have the freedom to pursue our lives. Clearly, we're on the high ground with that. Authority versus subversion. I talked about that with the loyalty and betrayal a little bit. And then the sanctity and the degradation. So this, they think, goes back to before we understood about germs and disease and whatnot, that there was this very high, this ingrained sense that we needed to have purity. And that really still fits with a water protection theme, because even a small amount of contamination can end up having a very serious, degrade our resources very seriously. So these 7 moral values can be used by people who are fighting for water justice to say this is about all of us, and we have a great foundation to stand on with that. So they're, like I said, universal moral foundations. And using the language of all the morals, we can create inclusive movements to protect and restore the freshwater resources that we not only depend on, but that we love. So now, in conclusion, who here likes to go swimming? Swimming. Who here doesn't like to go swimming? Yes. Who thinks that they were more likely to go swimming when they were children? Our children like to play in the water, mine do. Where are some places where you like to go swimming? Those of you who do like to, or did like to. Yes. Lake Superior. Ooh, yeah. Lake Michigan. Where else? Lake Michigan? Lake Michigan, Clark Lake. Anyone else? Other places? So when you go swimming, right, how do you get in the water? Yes? You walk in slowly rather than diving? Mm-hmm. Does anybody dive right in? Okay. Why do you dive right in? Get it over with. Because it's not as bad once you're in, right? But if you wade in and let your body kind of acclimate, even still that last getting in there can still be a little shocking. What if it's a cool night and it's late in the summer so the water's warm, Lake Michigan especially? We all just jump right in, right? Because it's warm. So, did anybody have swimming lessons? And what about when we go out boating? What do we have? Our safety vests, yeah. And then if it's a storm, out of the water. Yeah, so to me, getting in the water and swimming feels something like getting involved with the political process. Maybe we don't need swimming lessons, but maybe it would be easier to do with it. But hey, anybody can do it regardless. If there's a storm, maybe get out of the water. So to me, it's a great metaphor. And I would say that so far I have been wading very carefully and slowly. But if I notice the signposts around me and what I'm picking up from folks in my environment, it's time to dive in.